Let me give you some specifics on D-Day. This is fantastic. In the first 24 hours, over 150,000 men, 1,500 tanks, 5,000 tracked vehicles, 3,000 guns, 10,500 wheeled vehicles, nearly 17,000 aircraft, more than 5,000 ships, over 7,000 landing craft, and 23,000 paratroopers. I remember coming back, we had a certain route that we had to fly, because you can imagine with all that traffic, everybody better be in the right spot at the right time or you're gonna get run over. And I remember looking out, you know, in the channel, and we were at 25,000 feet, and there was more ships and stuff on that channel. You know, from where I was, you could walk across the channel. It was fantastic. And here come a bunch of C-47s, hauling gliders, our paratroopers. Our hearts really went out to those guys, because, you know, it was rough. They didn't know. They knew where they were supposed to go, but whether they got there or not is something else. But it was something else. As I remember, in the afternoon, our group commander came in and told us that tomorrow is going to be D-Day. And that's the day that really everybody was looking forward to, really. And so we started preparing, you know, getting all the information that we need, where our targets were, and the type of bombs we were going to drop and where and so forth. And first we launched about 40 some odd airplanes around 2:10 in the morning of D-Day, of the 6th of June. And the weather was lousy, a lot of rain and low ceilings and so forth. But they got off on time and everything worked out good, and they all got back okay. And then we launched another bunch at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then at 5 o'clock in the morning, then I chose to go. And I would have gone anyway. I mean, you couldn't have stopped me. You couldn't have kept me from going. And I'm not saying that for any big reason, but that's the way everybody felt. And airplanes that maybe we'd be having a hard time getting back in commission and so forth. I mean, those ground crews worked like dogs. And so we all went. We all hit our targets, and we all got back.
Our objectives were to capture the causeways coming from the beaches to the mainland to expedite the departure from the beach. And they said, that'll take 3 days, and then you're going back to England. None of it turned out as well as it was planned. As a matter of fact, only about 30% of the paratroopers achieved what they were assigned to do. The rest of us were all over everywhere, just scattered all over that peninsula. And then when we got over the Guernsey and the islands, the Germans occupied that, they opened up on us. And then we went around the pilots, and I found this out late. I was mad until I found out that they were 18, 19, 20-year-olds also, non-combative, and very few with previous combat experience. And they had them flying with no communications and no navigational lights, because they wanted to be minimal targets. And when we got over there, it was totally overcast. But boy, it opened up pretty quick, because you could see all the fireworks coming up out of there, and you'd hear the pinging in hitting the aircraft, and you'd see every once in a while a flash with one of them go down there where they'd run into each other. We had 3 lights that we usually, one of them stand up and hook up, second one's to stand in the door, or the third one is go. And when they gave you the go light, they skipped the other 2 and just hit the go light. A little bit of chaos, because those things were tossing around, and you could see all this, a lot of noise and racket and everything. And I'm of the opinion that either my plane was going down or this guy had it fully to the wall, because I had my helmet there. We had chin straps on our helmets, and I cradled my rifle. It was an M1, and because there wasn't any place else I could put it at that time. I'd have everything else stuck on. And the opening shock, that's when the thing that gets to the end of the static line, it pulls it off, and they called it the opening shock. And it's the worst that I'd ever experienced because my hands went like that, so my rifle got out and my helmet popped off. When I hit the ground, I hit on my back, and actually my breath was a little bit knocked out. I cut out of my things and looking up and seeing all this stuff going on, and just a little bit disoriented, and stood up and contemplating what my next move ought to be when I sensed somebody behind me. I thought it was one of our guys. Turned around, and it was a guy in German uniform, and he must have thought I was some dumb civilian out there because I didn't have a helmet, I didn't have a gun. And then when he recognized the uniform, because we had an American flag on one shoulder, I don't remember which one it was, but he probably saw that. And he started coming toward me and pulled his gun up, and it's the only thing, I had the knife in my hand, so when he came toward me, I knocked his hand as he fired, and I jammed my knife. Now they taught us that if you're going to use the knife, try to hit below the sternum and go up so that you could hit the most vital organs, and then withdraw. Well, I thought I had done that, but I tried to withdraw and it wouldn't come out because I probably hit the sternum, so I just got out of there when that happened. That was the next to the last prison in which I was assigned, and they had sent the group that I was, about 25 guys, I guess, 20, 25 guys, to Dresden, and we were housed in a school that was like Winter Park to us here in Orlando. It was just on the suburbs. And on February 14th, 1944, at midnight, the British came over and unloaded their incendiary bombs and set the town on fire. The Americans came in the morning and bombed around the clock, and it was about 2 days of that, and that total town, and it was really tragic because it was thought to have been an open city, and refugees had come from all over Germany to go there because they thought it was safe. And they were in the parks, and they were in the woods, they were in everything that they could put them in. And women, men, children, old, young, everybody gone. Very few people survived that because it was a total obliteration of the city. It was kind of like Sherman when he went to Savannah and said, that's where the thing came out to say war is hell. And that turned the tide, but then they took us down into the town, those of us that were survived, and had us go into the rubble of the places and find the bodies and bring them out and stack them in a pile and set them on fire, or pick them up and throw them in a truck. And really, you couldn't pick many up because they were so charred that they'd come apart when you'd pick them up, and they totally dehydrated, which was funny because all the liquid in your body, of which there's a great deal, was gone, and they shrunk down, and it was not a pleasant thing. And you could understand when Sherman said, "War is hell." The commandant moved us out of Dresden. They had gotten an order from the Fuhrer to eliminate all POWs. And the commandant for this area, I believe, decided he's not going to be tagged as a war criminal, so he's going to get us out of there. And so he moved us down to this thing in Sudetenland, this mountaintop mining camp. And we were still very thin, had very meager rations. And we saw this old lady who must have been about 30, old lady to us, struggling with a cart that she had everything she owned on it, and it was an old wooden cart. And she was pretty near bogged down and looked like she was worn out. So we just stepped out and leaned on the carts. We didn't have much to do except the gravity that would pull us and give a little more impetus to the cart. And with our heads down and pushing on that thing, and Harvey said to me, "Coleman," I said, "What?" He said, "We're outside the gate." And I said, "Oh my God, don't do anything, keep going." So that was a great escape.
I was the company commander of headquarters company of the 5th Ranger Battalion. My duties, of course, were to manage the company. Basically, the plan at Omaha was to attack the exits. Now, Omaha had very high bluffs, probably ranging from 80 to 120 feet. They were very steep, and there were 2 exits on Omaha where you could go up ravines, and there were roads. The attack plans were to attack those ravines, capture them so that you could move the troops up the roads, particularly the trucks, the supplies, and tanks. Unfortunately, the Germans fortified those exits very heavily, and we were never able to get the exits initially in the initial assault. A company of the 116th Infantry, who assaulted the Vierville exit, lost, let's see, it was 98 men wounded, 91 killed, and 8 untouched. So those exits were very difficult. The successes came with units like mine who landed between the exits, which were not as well fortified, and we went up the bluffs. In my case, we had a lot of smoke from a brush fire that obscured us, and we were able to go up scot-free and get to the top of the bluffs, which without that smoke, we would have had to fight our way. Pointe du Hoc was very, very important. It was one of the big challenges that the planners of D-Day had to handle, because we had learned that the Germans were building gun pits for 6 large caliber guns. Later we learned that they were actually 155 millimeters in those gun pits. They actually had 2 covered pits, covered with concrete, and the rest of them were open. But the problem with these guns was that with the range, the nominal range of those guns completely covered Utah Beach and completely covered Omaha Beach. Major Sullivan called me over and said, Red, the tanks have been called back to Vierville to help defend the beachhead, and Metcalf and I are going with them. You're in command. So here I suddenly am in command of a task force of 3 Ranger companies and an infantry company. And the mission given me was to stay put and defend this roadblock so that the German reinforcements couldn't come down toward the beachhead. In the process of planning, we decided to send out a patrol to Pointe du Hoc, and we were only 1,000 yards from it at Saint-Pierre-du-Mont. This patrol was to locate rudder and come back and tell us what condition they were in and what their positions were. I picked 2 men from my former platoon. I'd been a platoon leader in C Company, Sergeant Moody and a Private First Class McKissick. They were both good men. I think that Moody was the best non-com that we had in the battalion, frankly. And we sent them out after dark. Now these 2 managed to work their way through the German lines during a firefight and get to Pointe du Hoc and overrun Rudder's command post. By that I mean they missed it. They came back, having decided they missed it, found the command post, contacted Colonel Rudder, passed on all the information that we had, but these 2 found a reel of wire and unrolled a reel of wire through the German lines back to my position, so that in the morning when I got up and said, "Are Moody and McKissick back?" "Yes, sir." "Where are they?" "Over here, sir." I went over, I said, "Sergeant Moody, what did you find out?" He said, "No." I said, "Did you talk to Rudder?" "Yes." "What'd you find out?" And he handed me a telephone and said, "Here, you can talk to him yourself." So they both got, Moody and McKissick got Distinguished Service Crosses for that action. I was what is called a loose cannon. And the reason I was a loose cannon was that I was the headquarters company commander, and I really didn't have a job in combat until we established a headquarters. Well, during Normandy, we weren't able to establish a headquarters because we were always on the move. So therefore, I was available to do things, and I did all kinds of independent things. I led a 4-man patrol on D+1 down to the beach, and where I saw General Gerhardt and gave him a report on our operations. He was the divisional commander of the 29th Division. Anyway, General Gerhardt said, "What can we do for you?" And I said, "Well, we need supplies." He said to his aide, "Take him down to the beach, find him a vehicle, and load him up with ammunition." So that's precisely what we did. And I had a driver with me in the Jeep. We loaded up the ammunition, mostly 60 mortar, 81 mortar, and machine gun ammunition. We didn't favor rifle ammunition at that point. And we drove back. When we got to Vierville, there was nobody in the town at all. It was rather scary. But we had to catch up with the columns, so we drove and followed them, perhaps 3 miles before we caught them. And all along the way as we were going, snipers were shooting at us. I actually had my helmet knocked off by a bullet. It ended up landing in my lap. I also had about 4 others that were very, very close to me, hit the vehicle, that type thing. One point, there were no hedges for us, and the driver, Corporal Sharp, and I got out, got under the Jeep, and manhandled it by pushing it over our heads and then sliding behind it and pushing it some more. And we got it about 50 feet so that we were beyond the machine gun fire. Some of the machine gun fire was actually hitting the ammunition we had in the boxes, but it didn't explode. And after that point, we were able to get in and drive again. We finally caught up with the end of the column, and that is more or less the end of that story because the Jeep ran out of gas. Probably because the gas tank was hit by a bullet, I don't know, but it ran out of gas.
The bulge started on the 16th of December and ended on January 26th. And the generals had a meeting, Eisenhower, Bradley, Patton, Field Marshal Montgomery. And one of the questions that General Eisenhower asked General Patton was, how long can you be fighting, be attacking the southern part of the bulge? It came out in Bend. And he said, 2 days. My division had been on rest for about 10 days, and we had moved south in France, opposite the Siegfried Line. That was a defensive position Germany constructed after World War I to defend against the French. And our artillery preparation had started on the Siegfried Line for the next morning's attack, but they loaded us back up in the trucks and we went north. We're headed this way east, now we're going north, 90-degree angle, 150 miles overnight. Lousy weather, rain, sleet, icy roads. And by the time we got north of Luxembourg City, the next morning, the morning of the 17th, there was snow up to our knees in places. And on the morning of the 19th of December, 1944, 119 of us from my company, and a full-strength company with the medics and the signal and all that stuff, artillery attached to them, was 187 of us on the 19th. And we were supposed to go 10 miles that day, and we got about 5. Stopped at a city called Edelbrock. And the tanks were lined up like ducks on the road. And I was on the second tank. And we came under German mortar, rifle, and machine gun fire from the right. And of course we got off and we dug a defensive position. That move, incidentally, is it's a masterpiece in military history, that 150-mile move. And attack that soon. And 2 battalions from my regiment, 1st and 2nd Battalion. I was in the 1st Battalion. The battalion was almost 1,000 men, just short of that. And we went west into Belgium and were attached to the 4th Armored Division. And I didn't have the foggiest idea where we were. Second lieutenant in the infantry didn't need a map because you could say, take that hill. You could always see the objective, you know, take that bridge or whatever. And I didn't even know I was in Belgium. And so we were attached to the 4th Armored Division. The weather was so bad with all the fog and rain and snow and everything that General Patton couldn't have the airplanes fly that he had control of. And he ordered his chaplain to pray for good weather. But the chaplain, from what I've read, was, well, I'll say a little hesitant because maybe that wasn't the proper thing to pray for, killing people, you know. And of course, General Patton said, do it kind of thing, and he did. And it's unbelievable. I still can't believe it. Christmas Day dawned and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Not one. And in the distance, you could see airplanes, American and British aircraft, passing each other, going back and forth, finding targets on the ground. Supply planes, cargo planes, dropping parachutes, red, white, and blue, food, ammunition, and medical supplies. And if there's ever a beautiful sight in war, that's mine. It was unbelievable. Well, we received an attack order early Christmas morning, 1944, and I'll never forget it. It went like this. There's some American soldiers about 10 miles down the road. They're surrounded by Germans, and we're going in to get them out. We attack at 0700, and we did. We were going across an open, snow-covered field, and all of a sudden, there was a patch of woods on our front, and from our right front, we came under intense, and I mean withering, rifle and machine gun fire. And of course, instinctively, we all hit the ground. Well, there we are, 2 platoons attacking. I don't know where the other lieutenant was, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, there we are in the snow. We looked like raisins in the snow.